Hopefully there were pictures.
Oh, no.
Was make this at the front. This is, we think, the oldest monument here in the cemetery. This is the old Varney monument, okay? And there were a lot of victims of yellow fever that are in this particular monument. Oh, well, not for me, but for you, because I don't think there's anybody there. So if you will follow, hey, if you can't find that, there's nobody taking care of their tomb. You'll see a lot of them falling apart. The church has no right to touch this property. Interesting. It's yours and your family. Now, if it completely goes to the ground, and you'll see a lot of those, they can take that land back because there's nothing there. But they can't come in and say, oh, you know, I'm taking this back because you haven't buried anybody here for 70 years. Because it's yours. You know.
Yeah, but this land belongs to the church, maybe.
And unfortunately, people come here and desecrate it all the time. And I can tell you that last week we had this all cleaned up, and look what they've done to it. And please don't write on it. She was married in the church to the first time to a gentleman named Paris. Can you see the name up there? Now, somewhere along the line, Mr. Paris disappeared. And we don't know whether he actually died, wandered off, what happened to him. We have no record that we have found so far. But somewhere along the line, she became a hairdresser. And as a hairdresser, she was able to go into people's homes. That's what the hairdressers did at those days. They went into people's homes. And she, I don't know about you girls, but I talked to my hairdresser like I wouldn't tell them things that you probably wouldn't tell your mother. She got a lot of information that way. On top of which, who else did she talk to? She was a woman of color. She was free. She was never a slave, okay? And she would talk to the other people of color in her place. She got a lot of information. And she was a brilliant woman, very clever, very beautiful. And she was able to use that to do certain things. Now, she was not the first person to practice voodoo in this area, and she certainly isn't the last, because there's a lot of people wandering around today who tell you that they're voodoo queens, okay? Or kings. So, you know, it's up to what you believe. But she was very good at what she did. And say she's doing your hair, and you said to her, oh, Marie, I'm having the worst time getting pregnant. What can I do about it? And she'd get out a piece of cloth, and she'd put all kinds of things, ointments and herbs, and maybe a piece of money, special prayers, whatever, and make all kinds of things over it, tie it up in a string. That's your gree-gree bag. You kept it with you until your wish came true. So originally voodoo was to get bad things to go away from you or bring good things into you. And I think that's basically what she did. All this other stuff is much later that people were doing with it. But she had this wonderful reputation because at least 50% of the time she was successful. Now, somewhere along the line, she formed a relationship, and you can't read it here, but you can see it here, with a man named Glapion. Now, whether she legally married him or not, we do not know. But she was often known as the Widow Paris, okay, at one time. She lived a long time. She lived almost to the turn of the century. And a lot of people get confused with her because she had a daughter who was also named Marie Laveau. And they lived together. And the second Marie Laveau was just as beautiful as the mother and was practicing voodoo just like everybody else. She had a lot of children with both gentlemen, okay? So this is the story of Marie Laveau. And there's a lot of people who claim a lot of things about Marie Laveau. I won't tell you that. But people come here, and they write all over this, I don't know why, but they're making wishes. They'll bring something here. Now, originally, people who didn't have money, if they went to Marie Laveau, they brought her food or liquor or something like that to pay their debt. if you go to one of these altars, you probably leave a contribution of some kind, money-wise. But anyhow, I think that's what people are doing here. They also, if you see the symbolism of the X's, now primitive people would often put a mark on their entrance to wherever they live, just to keep evil spirits away. When it gets over to here, you have to remember people are very superstitious at this time. They don't know what is causing all this stuff that's happening to them. They also don't know what they can do to protect themselves. So any straw that they could get a hold of, including voodoo, is going to be very important to them. And you have to remember, we have all these epidemics that are occurring. People died young. So anything that they could do. And slaves particularly, they had nothing. They came here empty. But this tomb here belongs to the actor Nicolas Cage.
What? Oh, really?
Now, I have to tell you, Nicolas Cage is not from New Orleans. He doesn't live in New Orleans. But he has made the ultimate decision to be buried in New Orleans. That's why. And he wanted to build this. Now, he's notorious for not paying his bills. So they made him pay up front, and not only did they let him build this is fairly recent, but he had to redo. Look how nice all this looks here. Okay? Does this look good? So he had to do all of that. So this is supposedly from one of his movies, National Treasure. And the girls come and they kiss here. You can see this.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, why in the world? I can't imagine. But this is what they did. Obviously. Okay? But this is what you did. You build it before you die.
Yeah,
You got it?
like the pharaohs did.
So then this
yes,
would.
all for one. That's also for one of his. I had to look that up. I haven't had Latin since I was 18 years old. I've forgotten everything I knew. So, also, when they fixed up in here, they also did a lot of work. And if you look at this one, this is a pretty old one right here. You see this? And you notice, look at the number of people buried here. And if you also notice over here, this is a symbol that somebody buried in here fought in the Revolutionary War. Okay? Can you see that? So this is a revolutionary. You'll see Confederate ones. You'll see World War I and World War II plaques. So we're trying to go through all of them. There a layer of brick, a layer of brick, until it reached the certain height you wanted. There are two ways to put the body in. You can put it here, or if you made it this way, they would have an entrance there, and you'll see a lot of those going around in here. Now, with these come a lot of old stories I'll tell you about. You can take them with a grain of salt or remember them. But if you remember in New Orleans, we had tons and tons and tons of epidemics, particularly yellow fever, and people were taken off the streets and out of the houses as fast as possible because it wasn't because we thought we were going to catch it because we wanted their own big thing, or maybe they didn't have the money to do it or whatever. Remember, I told you we're a city of immigration. We were constantly getting wave after wave of immigration. And if you realize this combination of people, they might not have had family here. Well, people like to be with people like themselves. And so this is the Italian tomb. We even had an Italian architect who built this tomb for them. And so if you were Italian and you belonged to the Italian society, you would have a place in the tomb. They didn't open, these are not drawers, this is just decorative outside.
Oh.
You would go in here and you would have, it's like a mausoleum that you would probably have. This one over here is Portuguese. Can you see? Portuguese society. This one over here, this is a Catholic organization of one kind. It's a much smaller one over there. So if you belong to those organizations, you are in a society too, if you wanted to be. So you see there's lots of choices on how to be buried in a cemetery. U.S. government, this is not... Well, they're not going to take it belongs to church. You don't mess with the church. This is private property. It's so different.
Yes, chaque plupart.
Now, I think this is probably, to me, the most important tomb in here. I don't know if any of you have any legal background at all, but this is the tomb of Homer Plessy. Have you ever heard of the lawsuit Plessy versus Ferguson? No, blank. Well, Mr. Plessy, gentleman of color, notice the cemetery is fully integrated, gentleman of color, was chosen by his people to test the Jim Crow laws that we had at the time. Remember Jim Crow laws, separate but equal. And he got on the train going to New York, sat in the white car, was promptly arrested. And the case went all the way to the United States Supreme Court, where they decided that separate but equal would be the law of the land. It trusted the Jim Crow laws in the United States. And it lasted all the way until 1954, when it was Brown versus the school board. But we consider Homer Plessy quite a hero for being willing to test those laws. See, he's buried here. Important in the city. France. Unfortunately for him, he liked to gamble. And his family says no, but I believe that he did. Well, people didn't have money in those days. And so what did they do? They had property, and they would sell off property to pay any debts. He also had a lot of get-rich-quick schemes in his lifetime. And so he was a gentleman, and you might have heard of his name if any of you have been to the Marigny part of New Orleans. This is right outside the city of the French Quarter. It's one of the first suburbs. Some of you might go to the music clubs or something there. That's Frenchman's Street and all. It's known as the Marigny. That was part of one of his plantations. Also, he developed across the lake a whole town, which is known as Manderville. You might have heard of it. This was part of his plantation. It's a big city today. He started that. He also tried to develop another part of one of his plantation as a like Fontainebleau in France. Today it is known as Fontainebleau State Park. All right. So there are lots of streets in New Orleans that are named after him and his family. They say when he died absolutely broke. He was down to one manservant. Gee, my heart just bleeds for him. I've always wanted a manservant. Wouldn't it be nice? One of the things he's known for is the idea that he brought the game of craps to New Orleans. And so you can blame it on him. It was a game that was done in France, and I don't know if you know how it's played, but what they used to do is the gentleman would squat, they would roll the dice. The people here thought that looked really funny. And they said, oh my God, they all... Sometimes they didn't have time to prepare. They started using the wall of the cemetery. Later on, a lot of people said, I don't need to build something like this. I can use the wall of the cemetery. Okay? And so a lot of people, they would do this. You could use them again. Instead of having a common ossuary with your family, the church would take any remains and do their own ossuary. Remember I told you about the Battle of New Orleans? If you look here, these are the Protestant members of the Battle of New Orleans who were killed. They're there.